Mozilla, the Linux Foundation, and other corrupt woke open source organizations have received hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in donations over the last couple years alone. If you tally up the Linux Foundation's donations and the Mozilla donations altogether, you start to reach billions of dollars in a hurry. The Lunduke Journal, on the other hand, the only tech news outlet that's been pushing back against these corrupt organizations, the only one, it's not hyperbole, has not received hundreds of millions of dollars. We have not received $1 million, or even really a significant fraction of $1 million. Yet here we are. Here we are. The Lunduke Journal remains one nerdy David against an army, an absolutely massive army of extremely well-funded, woke tech Goliaths. We're talking Mozilla and IBM and Red Hat and Microsoft and Wikimedia and the Linux Foundation and on and on and on, all versus this guy right here. This one guy, right? And many of you, and myself is included in this, in the past have donated to so many of these organizations, have spent money buying products from these organizations which hate us. These organizations which engage in crazy woke DEI policies, racist, sexist, awful policies, where they actually engage in discriminating against users like us, just average normal people. What we can do to fight back against that is help the Lunduke Journal. Yes, me saying that is absolutely self-serving because I run the Lunduke Journal. But there really is no one else pushing back. So what we're doing right now through March 28th, Friday, March 28th, which is just a couple days from now, we're running some discounts on annual subscriptions, on lifetime subscriptions, and simply putting the call out there that if you would normally donate to the EFF, the Linux Foundation, Mozilla, or any of the other extraordinarily corrupt, dirty, woke, DEI-obsessed, and infused tech organizations, if you would have donated to them in the past, consider donating to the Lunduke Journal instead. Go to lunduke.com. You'll be presented with this page if you're watching the video version, and scroll down to a little link right in the middle, dead center of the page. Support the Lunduke Journal's fight against tech Goliaths with discounts through March 28th. And you can donate a bunch of different ways. You can make a one-time donation over at Locals. You can make a one-time donation with Bitcoin if you love the Bitcoin. And if you want to get a subscription, there's a bunch of perks like access to our exclusive forums. It's great. If you go to forum.lunduke.com, you get a forum. And you don't even get to see what's there until you've got an account there, right? Like it's a private, it's like a country club of like-minded nerds. It's amazing. And so you can go over there, and if you have a subscription, a lifetime subscription or a subscription via Locals or Substack, you can go in there and get an invite code that lets you in there, and no one else is allowed in there except for all of you. So there's no trolls. It's just this beautiful nerdy haven. We're going to do 50% off yearly subscriptions through both Locals and Substack. Again, you get all this at lunduke.com. You can get the lifetime subscription, which is $200. You pay it once and you get full access to Locals and Substack and the forum, which means you get any of the exclusive shows I put out. You have a bunch of different ways to interact with me and talk with people in the forums. And it's just a great way of supporting the work at the Lunduke Journal. Or you can pick up a year's pass to all the shows that the Lunduke Journal puts out via Itch. And again, if you go to lunduke.com, this is all right there. This is the coolest thing to me. This is a separate thing that's off to the side. It's not one of the regular subscriptions just because of the way it all works with Itch. But you can go there and download DRM-free MP4 files of every single show, including the exclusive shows that the Lunduke Journal puts out, which is almost every single day, sometimes multiple shows per day, all listed chronologically with the title of the name in the file name. So you can just download the MP4 files you want, burn them to a DVD, put them on a thumb drive and watch them from your TV, put it on your local Plex server, like however you want to do it is totally fine, because it's you can back it up on your NAS somewhere and watch it 50 years from now. It's glorious. And those that are supporting the Lunduke Journal are making these kinds of shows possible. The types of topics that we cover here are covered nowhere else. And I'm going to start with one example from the last month. I'm just going to look at a couple of shows from the last month because you don't see these covered anywhere. And the first one I want to talk about is ridiculous. A lot of these shows are hard-hitting news, right? But some of them are just too gosh darn enjoyable, but no one else covers them. For example, Spanish Wii hacker turned trans cartoon VTuber quits Linux Apple Silicon development. That's a title right there, baby. That is quite possibly the most ridiculous, absurd title of any article or show that the Lunduke Journal has ever put out. It's not the biggest news story in the world, but it's weird. It was just a really weird story, again, that no one else was covering. The Lunduke Journal this last month, over the course of late February and into March, was the news outlet that broke all of the stories around Firefox and Mozilla now laying claim to all of your personal data, saying that they flat out have the rights to do whatever they want with anything you upload or type or click inside of Firefox. And of course, the Lunduke Journal was the only outlet on Earth that covered the fact that Mozilla, the makers of Firefox, has been receiving USAID money to the amounts of millions of dollars to, quote, engage race, gender, and sexuality perspectives, end quote, as well as to provide social and political training where they center marginalized groups. It's insane. It's patently insane, and no one else covers it. I covered the fact that Ubuntu Linux is planning on ditching the GNU core utils for a Rust-based alternative. This is one of the nerdiest stories that we've covered over the last month, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We talk about constantly, every month, more examples of the insane organizations, the woke DEI obsessed organizations within the open source world and their constant attacks on anyone who is centrist or right-leaning. Or we talked about the Firefox fork known as LibreWolf declaring itself a very woke web browser and going on a rant about how awful the far right is and banning even mentioning my name. Linus Tech Tips bans people for saying, quote, all racism is bad. Right, the popular YouTuber just started going after people if they say that racism is bad. It's literally get banned. And of course, this last month, I had threats against my life if I were to appear at a conference in Austin, Texas. That was fun. And of course, the Lunduke Journal is the only outlet that covers what is happening related to DEI at the Apple and IBM shareholder meetings. No other tech news outlet covers these. You don't find these things covered by ZDNet, by The Register, by Wired. And the very, very seldom times that they do come up, they always run cover for the big tech companies. They always try and protect the big tech companies, spin for them, lie for them, downplay the evil things that they do every single time. And how many places did you see that covered the fact that tech journalists, open source focused tech journalists, are out there encouraging the firebombing of Teslas, and the director of cybersecurity for the Electronic Frontier Foundation is encouraging people to do so and sharing out details on how they can protect their identity while vandalizing Teslas. Literally, the EFF is training people on how to keep their identities hidden while they vandalize Teslas. This is the editor of OS News declared that all recently purchased cars are fair game and Molotov cocktails are cheap to make. Craziness. And no other tech news outlet is willing to touch this. It's insane what's happening. It's off the charts crazy, and it needs to be called out. The best disinfectant is sunlight, and no tech news podcast covers these, no tech news YouTubers covers these, no tech news media outlets of any kind, no magazines or whatnot covers these topics. It's crazy. One of the more bizarre stories that cropped up over the last few weeks was the open source initiative who claims to control the very definition of the phrase open source itself. They don't, but they claim to. They held an election for new board members, and a number of people who have been critical of them started running for seats on their board. Well, the open source initiative began crazy election tampering, changing ballots, changing the rules of the election after the end of the election just to keep any critical person off of their board. It was crazy. You can see over and over again through the reporting from the Lunduke Journal over the last year, how many of these open source organizations are the opposite of open. They fight against transparency and openness. They time and time again have these crazy shenanigans relating to elections, where they hold secret meetings to kick people out, where they change ballots that people cast after they're cast, all sorts of just crazy election rigging and tampering from open source organizations. It's bizarre and it's wild. And of course, in general, the Lunduke Journal is not afraid to cover the crazy wokeness that's out there. From the Linux Foundation wanting, quote, non-white, non-male people in their projects, to various legends of open source being under attack by leftists. The Lunduke Journal is alone in covering all of this. And this is just stuff from the last couple of weeks, a small sampling of it. You look through the last year, it's crazy. From big tech companies to small open source projects and gigantic, mammoth, Goliath-sized open source and free software foundations. Again, all versus the Lunduke Journal. And they fear the Lunduke Journal. In fact, many of these organizations have policies where you are not allowed to link to the Lunduke Journal, to mention the Lunduke Journal, or you will get banned for life. The GNOME Foundation, Microsoft, Red Hat and IBM, and so many others have firm policies. Never respond to Lunduke. Never link to Lunduke. And if anyone dares to even mention an article or a podcast or a video from the Lunduke Journal, you ban that person for life, even if, and this has happened repeatedly, even if that person is a prominent contributor and financial supporter of their organization. It's crazy. Which means the only way that this sort of reporting is possible, that any of these stories can ever be covered, is if all of you help out. That is the only way. That's the only option, right? The Lunduke Journal doesn't take a single penny from any of these companies. Not one bit. Not one dime comes in from IBM or Microsoft or Amazon or anyone else. The Lunduke Journal exists entirely because of the generosity of nerds like you. That's it. That's it and that's all. That means that no big tech company or foundation can swoop in and say, I'm going to cancel you, Lunduke. I'm going to pull your funds. It can't happen. Can't happen. The only people that can stop funding the Lunduke Journal are all of you. If all of you say with a unified voice, this is what the Lunduke Journal is doing is not worth it, we're not going to pay for it anymore, then I go away. But that's not happening. That is not happening thanks to all of you. Well, the Lunduke Journal is here to stay. And if you want to help us, if you want to make us really rock solid and secure financially going forward so we don't have to worry about the lights getting shut off here, if you want to make it so the Lunduke Journal can even grow a little bit in the future, consider donating. Go to lunduke.com, click on the Support the Lunduke Journal's Fight Against the Tech Goliaths, and there's lots of options in there. Ways to just give one-time donations, including via Bitcoin if you want, out of just the goodness of your heart. And if you want to get a subscription, we've got some discounts for you because we love you, because you're great. And that's it. That's it, and that's all. So if you want to see these stories be told, support the Lunduke Journal. If the Lunduke Journal weren't around, there are so many stories over the last year that you would never have heard about. From crazy leaks from companies like IBM and Red Hat and Microsoft, to wild shenanigans at Mozilla and GNOME and the Linux Foundation and so many others, and Wikimedia. The Lunduke Journal is the only one that's digging in, diving into the IRS records, getting leaks from whistleblowers with inside the organizations, doing the footwork to verify these stories and present them to the world. The only one that's out there. Now, I'd like to encourage, even though it would dive into my market share, I would like to encourage other tech news outlets, please consider doing your job too. Consider diving in and actually covering some of the biggest news stories in the world of computing that are happening out there, because all those tech news outlets, those that I've mentioned already today and so many others, they're just not. They're repeating press releases. They're doing interviews with people to talk about their great B2B enterprise strategies, but they're not covering the real news that's occurring right in front of their faces, that's impacting users, developers, contributors, project members, leaders, and just average people via the world of computing. So thank you again to every subscriber, to every one-time donator to the Lunduke Journal. This is not possible without you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across this glorious inner tube of ours, I do declare, end broadcast.